Це законопроект.
So this is a draft law that people voted for on the 13th of December 2022 by the parliament, and against which the local governments were mentioning their opinions, and the Chamber of Architects and institutions of civil society and also active civilians in media, due to the fact that the balance of interests is not taken into account there. So for the first time in Ukraine, the petition on vetoing of that draft law got the necessary number of voices in a really brief time, and still in society there is really acute discussion on prospects of development, of city development in Ukraine as a result of adoption of this draft law. Today we are going to work from 11 to 1:30 p.m. And the journalists will have the opportunity to ask questions from 1 p.m. to 1:30. And correspondingly online, we also have a huge number of participants who also will both speak and ask questions and also give us certain presentations. So first of all, I would like to thank our armed forces of Ukraine for this opportunity that we can hold this event and in general defend the interests of our citizens in the legislative process. Therefore, I offer to start, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Chyzhevskyi, the head of the National Union of Architects. Hello, dear colleagues, dear friends. The National Union of Architects of Ukraine that I am heading right now has 3,600 architects. In addition to that, it includes Architecture Chamber. We have more than 3,000 of architects and 1,800 of which are members of Architecture Chamber. We are a member of the World Union of Architects. We are associated member of the Association of European Architects that also includes the unions of architects from European Union, and currently we have our representatives in all the big cities and oblasts. We have like 25 of those. We are active in activities in our society and also internationally. I would like to mention that the law 5655 is not for the first time that we pay attention to that. Back in July 2021, we paid attention to the fact that it has to be reassessed. We were really constructive and we were working thoroughly on opportunities in order to improve it. But in 1 year of work, we realized that it's impossible because, first of all, a huge number of provisions that were included at the time to the draft law, they cannot be existing in the society or our community. Secondly, the position of authors and helpers, and let us name them beneficiaries, was really not flexible, let us say so. And as a result, it convinced us that our efforts to improve the law 5655 are not useful. So that is why we mention one more time that this law doesn't have to exist in our legal field. So for such a civil position and our position, we were promised that we will have feedback, the so-called feedback. So they were really brutal. We received that feedback. And the most harsh, it was for the family of our colleague who is responsible secretary of our committee, architect committee, Iryna. And as a result, there was investigation conducted. All the dirt that they put on us, it was not confirmed by the investigation, and the only thing that they blamed us that we illegally entered the digital system. But according to the decision of the architect committee, the information about the attested architects is shown in the system. So these are the things that we've done many years before. And I would like to mention that the absurd of the claims against us is also underlined by the fact that digital keys, with the help of which we were breaking the digital system, so to say, they are acting at present. They are functioning. So I would like to mention that we are not broken by these things. We are going to stand for the interests of the society, and in written we also received support from International Union of Architects. We received the letter, and also the president, Holly Cortez, and we received the letter of support from the head of Association of European Architects, Ruth Schegerman, and very interesting and really deep understanding and analysis of the draft law 5655, the architects of Poland and Sweden and Lithuania and Denmark and Romania. They also expressed their support when our colleagues were analyzing the aspects of the law that we paid attention to. I am convinced that that the truth is ours. I am sure that the president is on our side because he is on the side of light and justice. That is why we received this green light, so to say, and I'm sure that our efforts will be aiming at improving the legislation, in particular development of the City Development Code. I would like to invite to the floor Ms. Iryna Fedoriv, who is representative of CHESNO movement, the editor-in-chief of the relevant edition. And now we have online people, and they are asking questions. And we have a map on the screen, and there are certain logos. So Mr. Chyzhevskyi paid accent to that about the National Union of Architects. We have the CHESNO logo, and there are like yellow dots and arrows, and the number of the draft law, actually, that we will discuss today in details. You were involved to providing some statements and offers, and you were watching the inclusivity, so to say, of the process. So on the map, we have the number of appeals, the number of municipalities, and this is more than 1,000 of deputies of local councils, of rights representatives of political powers from different regions who mentioned certain documents they voted for and so certain proposals about the draft law 5655. So, Ms. Iryna, you were in the process, and as far as the CHESNO movement is looking for the clear political process, so to say, and inclusivity and involvement of public. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much. That's true. We are watching the work of the parliament, the work of the committees. I would like to mention that now we are talking not that much about 5655, but about the values that society wants to see. And the society wants to see honest and transparent reconstruction. And it's not only our society who wants to see that, but also our Western partners who are giving us the resources and who already gave us the clear signal that 5655 should not be signed. It's inappropriate totally. So we came to the fact that our Western partners and society are so worried about that. Why? Because probably in the committee we had a really bad quality legal process, and Lena Shilyak was responsible for that, a member of Sluha Narodu. So when we were trying to get involved to Zoom calls, when there was a meeting of the committee, they did not let us in. And those are people who are saying that digitalization should be everywhere. So if people are saying that they are for digitalization, but they do not let you in for the Zoom call, so it's not about democracy, not about transparency, not about live discussion. We were sending offers. We were waiting to participate in the meetings, but this never happened. We were paying attention to possible corruption risks and schemes that can be given by this draft law, but this was not excluded from there. It is hard to understand also what kind of what do they want to achieve? Because they were not publishing the offers, and the content was really secret to great public. And these stenograms now are published, and they are published not on the website of Verkhovna Rada, but because we obviously see that somebody wanted to hide information from the society just to make it secret. And we can see that the colleagues of Ms. Chulak from the party Sluha Narodu, they didn't like the moments that both we stressed and architects and Association of Cities, we mentioned that it is unreal to start a few thousand of pages in one night. Nobody can do that. And it's a hard text. It's not even like fiction literature. So it has to be the work of everyone who is involved in city development in Ukraine, but nobody paid attention to that. So I would like to pay your attention that not all the members of Sluha Narodu gave their voices for that. The situation was difficult, and it was adopted with the cooperation of the Forbidden Party, which is now not existing, and also without them, this law would not come into force. So most of people realized that they cannot vote for this. And unfortunately, not the civil sector, nor the Association of Cities, nor architects or other stakeholders and our Western partners, they did not have the opportunity to, so to say, to explain that to the parliament. We have the resolution of the European Parliament that says that this law cannot be signed. And indeed, we can thank that the office of the president did not come to signing that. So we understand that the situation is really conflict because the author of the draft law is the head of the party, Sluha Narodu, but at the same time, they have the people's deputies who now already are working fruitfully on the city construction code, and the work is being done. It is transparent. We see the stakeholders involved, and I want to believe that we will regain the time that was lost by our country, and Ukraine will see the transparent and clear process, and the Western partners will see in Ukraine the country that can be given resources, because we have to rebuild our country. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Iryna. You were really emotional. Online now, we receive questions. For a few months, we've had the discussion already about why now. So people look at the map. I would like to comment that one more time. Recently, there were a few events and what local authorities and architects and the great public in general received a very weird news that 5655 is 5821 already, and they invited to development of the secondary legislative acts. As far as we have the second part of the 19th article of the Constitution, that the state servants have to act only within the framework defined by law. So it is clear that not a single municipality can act as a violation to that, and not a single representative of state authorities. So on the map, we have more than 100 of municipalities who were reasoning based on the legal bodies, many expert organizations and analysis. They were mentioning the articles of Constitution that the provisions of this law contradicting to and other legislative acts. However, now I would like to invite to the floor, before we switch, so to say, to the legal field, I would like to invite the representative from the Berezhany city, the mayor of the city Berezhany, and before he was elected for the position, he has qualification of the architect, actually, and he can tell, so Rostislav Bogdanovich Bortnik, he can tell us about the problems if God save us from that, the development of these secondary legislative acts will be done. I'm not even talking about the use of funds for such work, because now our country needs money for totally different things. So I would like to invite you to the floor. On the screen, we should have it. Yeah, I can see in the window. So you can start. So your microphone is on. Yep. One of the communities in Ukraine. I represent one of the communities in Ukraine, in particular Berezhanska community. So indeed, this law is catastrophic for Ukraine. At first, we had the culture of the constructors. They have certain rights. So now, unfortunately, this law continues their rights. Like those who have money, they rule the world. And they will just get more rights. And at the same time, local authorities, they won't be able to control anything. They will just be told about that, and that's it. Working abroad, I also understand that digitalization is necessary, but not in such a manner. And it is really hard to review some great plan of the building on a small computer or even on your mobile phone. So even the leading countries like Germany, Austria, they do it still in paper way, and there is certain procedure for city construction documentation that there are certain like boundaries. Not more than 2 months the project is being considered, and then they get the permission or they don't. And in that period, you have the opportunity to, let us say so, like the constructor has the opportunity to have some preliminary discussions with the local authorities and so on, and people go there and they have no problems. We also have the issues that this position in local self-governments is really well paid and they don't employ. So there are certain criteria for employment and they clearly stick to that. So there is respect. So in my opinion, we are far from Europe in this sense. So even if we are talking about the future, we are hurrying to go to Europe, but we have to adopt European construction norms, and we have to adopt them already now. We have to fix our norms, because later on we will join the EU and we will have to redo our documentation because it's not in line with the European. So we have to act according to clear laws, and we have to, because if we want to have some projects from Europe together with Europe, we have to get prepared. Therefore, I see a lot in this. I mean that local authorities, local self-governments, architects, and even those who are responsible, they will just lose their control. We've got no problem with the fact that we have certain procedure and we have to stick to that. Therefore, I'm categorically against such documents. We need to work still on that draft law. It's very good that the city construction code is being developed and that many people are working on that. And at first, we have to make this city construction code, and then we work on amendments to law. Thank you. Thank you very much. Taking into account own experience, I would like to remind my colleagues that today during our marathon, we will have people from different regions. So right now, Mr. Rostislav Bortnik, the mayor of Berezhany city, it's Ternopil Oblast, and we are going to move from one point of Ukraine to the other one, from one representative of the sector to the other one. We will switch, and also we will have a presentation about the norms of legislation so that you can see with your own eyes how it's happening. I would like just to mention that Ms. Iryna Fedoriv, a few times I heard that she mentioned that against this law, for the first time in the history of Ukraine, the state of Ukraine, it's like the great public who improved their work with the municipal powers of different levels. They came together. I mean, when people say that it's just a problem of the big cities have more capacities to create their own structure and to find architects for their requirements. In small communities, especially some villages and settlements, just objectively, they don't have such a possibility right now. I would like to invite you on the floor Ms. Kyriy. She's the head of the Architectural Chamber of Ukraine of the National Union of Architects of Ukraine, in order to switch to the block of this interconnection, because I have to mention this. I've been talking to the mayor of Chyzhevskyi, and he said that for many years I couldn't find, according to all the criteria defined in legislation, the architect. And those were just the criteria. And it was hard to find the proper person who will live, taking into account the interest of the city, who will develop the city. And it's the person who is evacuated from Izyum. And one of the things mentioned in 5655 was about the work of architects and their role in the city construction process. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. My name is Anna Kyriy. I am deputy head of the Architectural Chamber of Ukraine of the National Union of Architects of Ukraine. And I am saying hello to everyone here, the whole Ukrainian marathon, Ukraine against 5655. And I would like to take this thesis that it is that the situation, incredibly important situation and moment that we have the union of professional communities, of the public sector, of the local authorities. I would like to thank the authors of 5655 that such union happened, because this is our horizontal network of active people. This is our power of people of Ukraine. I am greeting everyone with that because it's a very good situation. As for the things mentioned by Mr. Slobozhan about the architects, it is hard to find the architects, but reigning of the prestige of this profession on legislative level is happening for quite some time already. When we had the adoption of the law and regulation of city construction activities, the role of the main architect of the city was multiplied to 0. Earlier, it used to be the main person in the city. You can come to that person, you can solve some issues, ask questions. Now the main architect of the city, it's just a useless person. He's limited by his powers to sign some documents, like only the distance from the red lines and so on. It's not the visioneer person. The architects, they should be visioneers. They should form policy. They should form the image of the city. So this is gone long time ago. So not a single person with the architect profession, they don't want to go to this position. I won't even mention the salaries. We will omit this part. But they don't want to work as a main architect of the city. And it's a bad thing, because the ambitious person would not like to do that. What I want to say about our today's event and why do we have it in general. As of today, we have the dead draft law 5655. It is dead. For 9 months, it's not signed by our president. We have a petition to the president where we collected the voices 3 days after the voting. 25,000 we received on the day of voting on the 13th of December for 5655, and 42,090 Ukrainians said that they want to have this veto. Ukrainians said that they are against 5655. On this map, we have 1,000 of deputies of local communities, 57 communities who signed this. And also Ukraine voted against this draft law. We have a resolution of Europarlament, and we would like to thank the Europarlamentarians because they are really knowledgeable about all the risks and all the bad sides of the draft law. They know they can translate that into English. And there are people who can help them to translate that into English and explain all of that. We are grateful to members of Europarlament who mentioned clearly that we have to encourage our President Zelensky not to sign this draft law because he is making priorities to privileged group of people who are, as of today, our constructors. So long ago, this bad construction culture took place in our market. We have to do something with that. We have to change this construction culture. And it seems that we can bury this draft law. We can put that, so to say, into the earth, but people start telling us how good this draft law is. So now we will convince all the Ukrainians, local governments, architects. They are talking to us as to people with mental disabilities, people who are not able to read it and understand. Really? I'm working in this profession for 20 years. I know how it works in practice. I can tell everyone what are the bad sides of this draft law, but I want my colleagues to mention this also. I would like to add that knowing all these bad sides, knowing this bad situation, this low construction culture in Ukraine, we wanted really to have the reform of city construction 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It is time for that, but we knew what kind of problems are there in the field. This is absence of the public control, absence of real tools, how people can impact the view of their cities. Second problem is that the legislation is going to the biggest stakeholder, the constructor, and legislation is written like for them, for their needs. The problems that we see with the intellectual rights, these are the problems of the field, and we wanted from our people who are making reforms to solve these problems. But nobody asked us. So the lawmakers, they were not asking the professional communities about our problems. They were not asking the public sector what is wrong with city construction in Ukraine. Do you know whom did this lawmaker ask? I mean, Iryna already mentioned those people, that is Lena Shulyaka, Oksana from the ministry, main lobbyists. They asked constructors what kind of problems they have. And the constructors said, like, the intellectual rights of architects are not helpful, state control, activists, they really don't let us do our job. And the lawmakers, they are solving problems of constructors. How do we take the intellectual rights from architects? How do we put down all the activists so that they don't say anything? Because they are saying that we are getting paid for that. So they solved the issues of the constructors, and they did not solve the issues that were painful for us, but they even made it more painful. So the problems that were urgent, the draft law 5655, it just strengthened the problem. So of course, professional architects, they are against 5655. Public sector, local self-governments who don't have their rights according to that draft law, they all are against. And we can talk with mantras, with explanations that it is strengthened somehow, the architects and so on. So Parhaladze mentioned that the architects are the main people in this draft law. I read it. The architects become the main people. If you say this phrase, it doesn't mean it is so. By the way, the Confederation of Constructors of Ukraine, they participated in Zoom, and the public sector and architecture chamber, they did not. They were not able to participate. So this is about the transparency for those who are making this. So I read the stenogram and I made my own conclusions. I would like to say that our international partners are watching this. I would like to thank them for their support and that they are on our side. I know that also the president of Ukraine is on our side, and I truly hope that now this transparent process, which was launched based on the committee of the parliamentary profile of Verkhovna Rada of the city construction code, that this process, inclusive and transparent, I would like to pay attention at this moment. The city construction, it's when we are asked, when professional institutions are part of the working group. We were asked, what problems do you have? And we can find solutions together. So therefore, I encourage everyone to join around the city construction code and the president of Ukraine to support this process. I'm talking for a long time already, so I want to open this architecture block. And I would like to give the floor to Dmytro Litovchenko. He is our architect, city of Kyriy. So now he is in the armed forces of Ukraine. So I would like to thank all the architects who are now defending our dignity and our freedom on the front line, to thank our armed forces of Ukraine. I'm asking you to turn on the video of Dmytro Litovchenko, architect of the city of Kyriy and the military servant. So now we have the large-scale war that Russia started when it attacked our country in 2014, and then at the time when Ukrainian people, they were standing for their rights and they were fighting against the representative of the Russian world. So now we have some lawmaking issues, especially about city construction field. Even before 2022, we had a crisis of state policy in this field. In spite of a lot of reforms, there was corruption and the interests of communities were neglected, and cultural and good environmental conditions were also neglected. So that was due to the power who promised to people some things, and they did not do that. We see that some powers, they are trying to help the constructors via the legislative amendments that are expanding their possibilities, neglecting the opinion of professional community. I would like to mention that the things that are happening around the draft law 5655, taking into account representatives of professional community, also the members of National Union of Architects of Ukraine are threatened. So we have clear understanding that this document is bringing huge risks. In case if it will be adopted, there will be full legislative nihilism in this field, and it will promote illegal development of cities and territories, and together with the economic crisis and absence of real understanding of how long the war will last, it will launch the process for reducing the economic potential of our country. I would like to mention separately that Euro Parliament, with their resolution, they are asking Ukraine not to adopt this law, taking into account all the issues. And this is also a sign that the foreign investments won't be enough to rebuild Ukraine during and after the war. The main task of legislative power as of now has to be forming of strong institutional basics for the city construction activity, which will make it possible to involve people who are interested in rebuilding. So we have to make all communities interested by consultations with the professional organizations and development of city construction code. We have to adopt proper draft laws. So I am addressing the great public, and I hope that the higher authorities of our countries will make the proper decision for development of cities, settlements, and villages that will promote reconstruction after our victory. Thank you very much, Mr. Dmytro. I would like to invite to floor Kyrill Chuko. He is the head of the Committee on Public Connections of the Architectural Chamber of the Union, National Union of Architects of Ukraine, the city of Ternopil. The task of our architecture block is to discuss and to show certain aspects of the draft law that are just destroying this field. And from different regions, we will have architects with us who will highlight in these aspects. So actually, I invite to floor Kyriy, the city of Ternopil. He will tell us about digitalization and how the achievements of the unified digital system and digitalization are destroyed in this draft law. Greetings to everyone. My name is Kyriy Ternopil. I'm the architect. I'm working in communication with the great public in the chamber. So I would like to briefly mention that I got involved to public activity after I learned about this draft law, and I realized that I don't want to work under such conditions. Therefore, I would like to mention that the authors of the draft law, they are saying that one of the main theses and ideas of the draft law is digitalization of all the city construction procedures. So this is kind of a good idea. It's all transparent and open, but actually it doesn't offer anything new, like from the scratch, because digitalization is already acting. Since 2019, 2020, we have the digital system in construction, and 5655 is just clarifying certain provisions that are already regulated by law on city construction. So digitalization will work for the best, but as soon as local communities will have the proper functioning city construction documentation. But what do we see in practice? That very often they either don't have it or it's out of date. So we need to make it up to date. And it's quite hard. And it's impossible to make that quickly. And in this case, when the city construction documentation is not relevant, these automatic procedures of permits, they have really bad consequences because it's disbalance of the functions of city territories. And first of all, there's conflict of interest of the key stakeholders in the process of city construction. And first of all, the communities, local communities will suffer from that. How does it look like in practice? So the practical example, we have the detailed plan of territories, and it is not in line with the general plan of the city or the settlement. The target, like for example, the land plot, its destination is not proper. In Ukraine, we don't have the complex plans for development of territories. The detailed plans are not in line with the city construction documentation of the higher level, and we just have the city construction chaos, and digitalization here won't be able to do anything. And it turns out that under the facade of digitalization, under such a nice cover, 5655 is creating kind of working and transparent system, but it is adopting totally wrong and harmful decisions. The reason to that is the algorithm, how the system works. The digital system is not operating qualitative data. It is just checking the availability of proper documents. Just whether you can put all the checks, all the documents were filled in. And if on the previous stages we had certain mistakes or they were included there with understanding, like the system will skip it because the system is checking just the number, but not the quality of the documents. Digitalization is not a superpower that will cope with the corruption already here and now. Such things, they don't just happen. We need institutional changes. We need clear mechanisms, and 5655 is not offering that. Absolutely. But it creates new corruption risks. And thus, 5655 is just discrediting the digital system that already exists. and also what is going to happen with it further. So I don't see the use of 5655. I don't see the sense in remaking it or like reviewing. I think that it is easier to create something new with good and transparent procedures. So if we start digitalizing chaos, we won't receive the logical system. We just receive the digitalized chaos. What is offered by 5655 and why I am confident that none of the Ukrainians want it. So that is why we all came together here with all the community from different fields in order to explain this and in order to make the right decision and to start working on the normal code of rules where we think it all through in order to rebuild our cities and develop them further normally, taking into account the interests of all the stakeholders and first of all the citizens. Thank you very much, Kyrill. It's a very nice finalization of your speech. I would like to give the pass to local self-governments. We have the city head of the city of Slavuta, Khmelnytskyi Oblast, Fedoriv Vasilyevich. I would like to ask him. So, Vasily Bogdanovich, are you with us? The city head of the Slavuta city, Khmelnytskyi Oblast. I invite you to the floor. Your community was one of the initiators of the relevant appeal. You were mentioning certain violations of legislation and the certain issues that might come if these violations are not deleted. So, Vasily Bogdanovich, I hear that you should turn on your microphone. So, I did it. Thank you very much. Hello one more time. Glory to Ukraine. We are one of the first cities that signed the agreement with state inspection, and we in Slavuta city we created that. It was also a very complicated procedure. We needed to have specialists, lawyer, and constructor. So we employed one person. This person was not approved. Then the second person. And in this period of time, we issued 1,000 of permits. We had no claims. So not a single person mentioned that local self-government made them to give something. Do you know how it happened? The room in Khmelnytsky, $4 per square meter. It's not a secret. You know, together with the city head, we came to the Verkhovna Rada when the investor could not submit their object because it's $4 per square meter, and it's not a secret, and we succeeded. But we succeeded to create such a system that gave the opportunity for the investors to work properly. When the enterprises were being constructed, they said, like, so we can just submit that and that's it, and you need nothing. Yes, and they did it, and we were helping them because, you know, no one is as interested as local self-governments for the investors to come to build and to have the opportunity to submit the things that they've done. So look what we've got. The person. So he built the house for 3,000 square meters. It's a private house. And then via the court, I will just put that into something else. So the law allowed that. The resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers was not in line with the law, and they created this artificially so that nothing can be done. So, okay, the next thing, I'm preparing the letter. And so the entrepreneur ask for allowance to build the house, like 4 floors. He built the 5th floor, and people are writing appeal, like, we paid money for technical premises, and they were going in line. So he had the project for 4 floors, and then the 5th floor he built, and he is selling that to people. And I say, like, give the permit because you understand the consequences. And they say it's not threatening life, so we don't have to provide you the permit. So as of today, the residential premises are built. So in what conditions people are? I'm not saying that the houses are like having 5 centimeters of like heating and so on. If we are the state, we have to bear responsibility because investor is a person. The person is paying, and the person believes that everything is okay there, and then this is submitted, and you know that you have to reconstruct that because it is falling apart. So yeah, we understand that it's a function of the state. Then let the state say that local self-governments do not go there. So then just do nothing with that and then give the last money for it. So it's not possible that you have all the powers, but you are not controlling all of that. And the only thing that we asked is to establish the unified rules that are clear, like as colleagues mentioned, digitalization, yeah, it's good, but if you don't go to the object and you don't see what kind of doors are there, what kind of windows and so on, you can't make it via the computer without visual inspection. You can't do that. We are talking about not only critical infrastructure, but residential houses, the places where people will live for years. We don't want that in 3 years the house is ruined. In 1988, I was in Spitak, and I came there when the houses were ruined. All the 5-storied houses were ruined, just like in Turkey. They were lying, and people were inside because they calculated that they can make it by hand, so they are used to having this kind of things. But there was an earthquake, and everything was ruined. So I also worked in 70s as the deputy city head. 50% of 50% of costs people had to pay for illegal construction, and this is how it stopped. So either people will protect investors, or because as of today we have the most the corruption structure. You know, they found the taste of money, so to say, and they realized that on a single spot they can make they can get millions, and they want to have that on legislative level. So today we are representing the community of people. We understand that under such conditions we cannot exist as such. So we are asking, Mr. President, people lied to you because this group of people who are creating the criminal group today, they are like simple people. They 40,000 of people signed in one day this. So we all understand the consequences, right? But we want to do that reconstruction. So tell us, please, what we are talking about with such a draft law. Who is going to control this construction? Who is going to give the money for that? So no one is going to give you money for not a single project if you cannot check how is it built. Because to create some agencies, look what did they write. So the constructor can create, and the local authorities who have the institutions created, they cannot control the objects of municipal ownership, the objects that are under construction, you know. So as of today, we lost trust, and we can do nothing, and they can do that, and they can't control themselves. So it's a paradox, you know. It's the same that some mosquitoes are flying, like the cows are flying, and so on. And at the end, the city construction code I am participating in with the Association of Cities of Ukraine is working really professionally. There's a lot of useful information. There are professionals working. I am participating with pleasure there. We are working efficiently, and as of today it will reflect the position of people. But the only thing is that if politicians will join it, then probably our work will reduce. So it was mentioned that it's a very important project. I invite all of you to join, and I think that it will show the real picture, the real image. Thank you very much. I'm really glad to see all of you. You look good. Thank you very much, Vasily Bogdanovich. You are with emotions, but these are good and right emotions. I understand why you have those. I was mentioning, and from the Union of Architects, we are talking a lot with our international partners. We are asking questions about how the European structure is built and regulating the relationship in city construction legislation, and all the European countries are saying that the issue of control, the issue of responsibility is always given to cities because the city has to control the construction and bear responsibility to the community. So this is logical. This is the right thing. This is natural, and this is how it should be. Why draft law 5655 decided to create that in totally unnatural way, to take all the rights from the local governments and give them to some private controllers? This is kind of a nonsense, which is not clear for European partners. They are tolerant people and they cannot say that directly. So we are going to do this work and we are going to talk with emotions and so on. As far as I raised this topic, I would like to add one more important thing. The things mentioned by European partners in private discussions, they say that no money, they will not give money to centralized system for reconstruction. Money should be in cities. And this is also information for the authors of our draft law. I would like to remind you that we have the All-Ukrainian Marathon, and all the regions of Ukraine are represented here, professional community of architects, local self-governments, public sector. I would like to give the floor to the city of Dnipro. Our architect, Olga Podushkina, and she is the head of the expert committee and committee on oversight of the architecture palette of National Community of Architects of Ukraine, and therefore she will tell us about the violation of intellectual rights that are mentioned in the draft law 5655, why architecture community is against the draft law 5655. Olga, the floor is yours, City of Dnipro. Yes, hello everyone. In my opinion, the draft law has to contain the norms that have to be regulated by the law of Ukraine on intellectual rights, and it is vice versa here because there are certain contradictions. For example, page 43.19, it mentions that the city construction documentation is not the object of the intellectual property, but this is the city construction, and this is included to the intellectual property rights. So this is violating intellectual property rights of the authors. And for example, like Article 54 of the Constitution of Ukraine is mentioning that the citizens are guaranteed to have the freedom of technical and fictional arts and moral and other interests that are emerging due to various kinds of intellectual activity. And Article 41 of the Constitution, each person has a right to own and to distribute their property and results of their intellectual activity. But especially we are worried that the draft law requires to have the agreement on development of project documentation for construction, and there are conditions on mandatory transfer of intellectual rights. This is page 49, part 3. They have to be written in the author's agreement, which is also regulated by other laws in Ukraine, and this is forcing to forced taking of the intellectual rights. And Article 15 also the rights of authors. They have the exclusive right to use the things that they created, and they can provide permission, and this is defending the property rights of the authors. Sometimes it seems that the author, the architect, owns only the idea, but I would like to mention that the author rights, it's first of all responsibility. So if the building all of a sudden is ruined or destroyed, then the chief architect is responsible for that. He's bearing responsibility for the lives of people who live in this premise or they work there. So they owe the responsibility from the beginning till the end. They know all the hard interconnections of the elements of the whole. They are bearing full responsibility for the results of their activity. They synthesize the art and the construction. So it's not a combination of glass and some concrete elements, but it's a harmonized spatial structure of the environment where the person will live. It has to be created taking into account the aesthetic principles and environmental friendliness and comfort. Only the architect can organize clear hierarchy for implementation of his project and help the constructor get a product of good quality. Can our customers take that on them who will have the author's rights according to the agreement? Again, when we are talking about the author's rights, it should be in line with the legislation. Only the chief architect can bear responsibility for the decisions that have to be in line with all the norms. And only then the construction will serve for at least 100 years. It will be safe, comfortable, nice, and ecological. This is the future. I would like to bring example from the legislation of Poland about the objects of intellectual rights. And first of all, it's that any sign of art activity of individual nature established in any form without it, and it doesn't matter what is the object of that, even if it is not finalized. So the person who created that has a right for that without taking into account any formalities. And if the thing created by other people are changed or rewritten, this is the harm to intellectual property. And this is what is accepted in all the European societies. 4 positions: legislative acts, official documents, materials, signs, symbols, published patent or some specifications, and press release are not included to intellectual property. All the other things are subject to object of intellectual property. So we Ukrainians, do we deserve this? Yes, of course. No to anti-democratic draft law 5655. We need to delete the norms contradicting to other laws. So we have to take the example of developed countries and we have to study the problems and we have to make relevant amendments to legislation. I foresee our future in development of the city construction code. Here I would like to finish. Glory to Ukraine, glory to our armed forces. Olga Podushkina, the city of Dnipro. Thank you very much, Olga. Thank you very much. I'm asking the city Dnipro to join us. So they should be with us. So Kozik Oleksandr Alexandrovich, Director of the Department of Working with Incomes, City Budget, Dnipro City Council. Yes, I'm with you. Hello, Mr. Alexander. Hello, glad to see you. Yeah, I am here. I'm really glad to see everyone. And I would like to begin my speech with the appeal to the authors and lobbyists of this law. While local self-governments and municipalities are against this draft law, this is a rhetorical question. Why are we so active? Why are we against this? The answer is obvious. It's in the core of this law, the law on regulation of city construction activities. This is the regulator. And it depends on this law whether it will be comfortable to live in the communities or not, in villages and settlements, how they will look like and how they will develop in a pretty significant period of time. So we are considering diseases, not for months, not for years, but we are considering that for the dozens of years. and the appearance of the city is forming the society that lives there in a certain period of time. Indeed, this is how it is. And this society is giving the powers to their authorities to have control. And the law 5655, it is fully taking the rights from the communities, these rights from the communities. As it was mentioned, it's not balanced from the point of view of rights and obligations of municipalities, population of cities, great public, and it's just in the interest of the constructor, so all the stakeholders of this process. Therefore, I would like to mention just the main theses that probably were mentioned already, but they are very important from the point of view of this draft law, that is, it contains institutional powers. Where do we see that? Those are state functions of control in the construction field. They are given to state control. Okay, they are transferred, whatever. But the devil is in details, right? The private structures, they are functioning based on agreements, and the controlling activity will be regulated by certain codes. So there is a legal issue, because the administrative code is substituted with the economic code, and this can't happen. Maybe the things that we clearly can see is the absence in the law of prevention of corruption risks between the constructor and the employer. So we are all adult people. We are competent specialists. We understand that to make the controlling structure for yourself, your own structure, it's like, yeah, it's the aim of the constructor, but there are some fines written, like if they do not perform, like if the document, if they sign the act of readiness to exploitation of the object, which was built with violation 280, almost like 2,000 hryvnias. So these are decorative kind of issues that are trying to hide from us the possible corruption. Taking into account the cost of the square meter of the construction that was built, I'm sorry, it's nonsense. In addition to that, this law doesn't have at all the opportunity for the local self-governments to initiate some checks. As I mentioned, this is some kind of parallel reality. When the constructor comes, he does something on the territory of the city, but nobody can go there. So this is a kind of the great public which is living in the city, but that's nonsense. I'm sorry, how do we live further? So the constructor built this and left. And very often, he's not the citizen of the city. Even more, we are saying a lot about decentralization that helped our country to cope with the first periods of the full-scale invasion. What do we have with this law? So here the principles of decentralization are deformed, because this is bringing us to central executive bodies. And I would like to mention that it's a certain satellite as a city construction chamber. I mean, What can we say here? Where is decentralization? We paid a lot of attention to the fact that in the law, there are principles of digitalization applied and principles of some territorial principles. So all the representatives of communities, of society, they just vote for it, but we don't have to manipulate. In law, these principles are applied, but they are applied with certain manipulation. Just like my colleagues already mentioned, digitalization, it's just a tool, and it should not substitute the sense. When representatives of self-governments, local self-governments, again, in this digitalization, they do not take part in the process. I guess that it's not okay. If we are talking about the balanced law, then each party, each side should have equal rights. Therefore, we are against. Communities are against this law even more. I would like to give the floor to the chief architect, if you allow me, of course, of the city of Dnipro. He also has some things to say. Dmitro. Hello, dear colleagues. I will allow myself to mention just a few theses that cause a lot of worries from our side in this draft law. Namely, so let us see, the authors of the draft law make a lot of referrals to the topic of the city documentation, city construction documentation, and this is the main regulation of the city construction processes. However, please pay your attention to the fact that if we are talking about provision of conditions and limitations for city construction in the spectrum where we can not provide some limitations and conditions, we have clearly formed principles based on improper documents provided by the person who is ordering that. But the reason why they refuse to provide the limitations, they are mentioned by the requirements of city construction documentation. So what can we mention further? The interesting thing is city construction documentation, in particular in Ukraine at present. What is the condition of it? For example, the city of Dnipro put a lot of efforts for developing the system of city construction documentation. We have the acting general plan, which was edited last time in 2020, and also the acting zoning according to the plan, and also we have detailed plan of territories for the central part of the city, and also in development now we have more than 20 detailed plans. However, if we are saying that the link to the city construction documentation is the main part, so let us consider what is there in this documentation from the point of view of the data that we are providing to the constructor. If we are saying that all this construct as a result is based on two parameters, that is the height of person and the percentage of construction, then it's like chapel in Ranchan and the typical multi-storied building is one and the same building. Is it so? Where's the logic of city formation as a structure, as a composition, as a social structure, as a structure that is showing the environment which is provoking citizens for a normal social process? Because as a matter of fact, we are going to lose cities as objects of city construction from the point of view of art, because we are receiving some plans for lives, in our opinion, This is not appropriate. Thank you. Thank you very much for your speech, Mr. Architect, and thank you very much to Mr. Oleksandr for your statement. I would like to remind everyone that we have the whole Ukrainian marathon, and the architecture community joined us, and local self-governments from all the regions of Ukraine. I also know that we are watched live by foreigners, so thank you very much to Ukrainian Crisis Media Center that you make interpretation for our international partners. I invite to the floor in our whole Ukrainian marathon, Ukraine against 5655. I would like to invite the city of Uzhhorod, Ms. Maria Bobrik. She is the head of Transcarpathia Regional Community of Architectural Chamber of the Union of Architects of Ukraine. Ms. Maria, I invite you to the floor. She will tell us about the private controllers, and she will strengthen the topic that was just discussed, that they can create such campaigns to control themselves, and this is the biggest systemic problem. And we are against that all the time. Are you with us? Yes. Hello, everyone. You presented me as the head of Transcarpathia Regional Community of Architecture Chamber of the Union of Architects of Ukraine. I would like to mention about the policy of the draft law, just to sum up, so to say, and how they are introducing the controllers in particular. In construction industry, we have some technical support, we have some performance of works and so on. As for the private persons, I consider that a bit different form of economic activity. It doesn't fall under these services. And we have the analogy here about the checks of fire safety that are initiated by the owners of the objects. It's weird, right? At this time, these are the owners of the state buildings. So in case if we involve the private person of the city construction control, so those who order, they wouldn't like to involve private persons, but the results have to be okay for both sides in such a case, and taking into account that the authorized persons, they have the right to work in the structure of this legal person with additional responsibility, or how is it called. So from the very beginning, it is regulating the process and part for the control objects of SS1, SS2, and there should be like 5 people or 10 people. We are not talking about qualification. These are like mathematic parameters. So it's just like with the digitalization. There is algorithm and we are acting according to it, and all the other issues most probably won't be taken into account. So when this company is hiring certain number of people, they have their premise, and they make so that these people, they are obliged to the company. It's unclear how do they succeed from this. We don't understand what is the strategy of receiving profit by these companies. What is the understanding of their campaign? Again, if we try to understand that, we have some suspicions. It's important to understand the experience and qualification of such people, because there are other participants of the construction market. There are members of self-regulation organizations just like we are. And so the authorized persons of city construction control, they are... So if mostly those are lawyers, you understand that theoretically, yes, they know the legal ground, but it's a bit different than working and having some practical experience in real sector of the economy, that is in construction. But competent people from construction, they will not go and work with some organizations that later on will have the private city construction control. And the main problem, of course, is that we cannot be autonomous in decision making, and also there are members of some competent organizations that, for example, if we are looking at this with the, so to say, fresh eye, so we know that we have to prepare the specialists, or we put them in line with the state servants, and they have to report, they have to respond to applications of citizens and be in line with the legislation. But this legal person, they won't be able to ensure the level of the control as a specialist, even when risking their property. Most probably, later on, this will come to courts or the constructors themselves will start creating this, because these norms of law, they are referring us to some reasoning, and we can make them not affiliated, but there are certain difficulties, and this is a huge threat to our field, because we have already the great disbalance. And I think that it is not necessary to create some hybrid responsibility. We are moving towards the EU. There's either personal responsibility or responsibility of representative of the state, and we don't have to invent some special way. It's always harmful if we just recall our chaotic movements to NATO, EU, neutrality, and all the other chances that we've lost. We know the price of these chances that we've lost already. So, of course, in the direction of that we are developing in, this draft law is making us weaker, so to say, taking into account what number of people are involved in the construction and solving difficult issues. And again, if we are talking about city construction documentation, our architect from Dnipro mentioned, and the objects of cultural heritage, we will still mention this. We can say that those are not specialists, but like business people. And if this draft law will come into force, this will be a natural monopoly for city construction according to their own understanding. And here, again, the executive bodies of local councils, we have some questions about them, because they have, according to the draft law, it's like free of charge, and those who order, they have the choice. But if they have a choice, then what is the economic benefit? Like the enterprises, they usually are aiming at some profits, and this seems really suspicious and harmful, and of course with high economic risks. In general, the draft law seems to be not really valuable system without some horizontal system, which is not flexible, like the Ministry of Regional Development, and like I don't know how they will be called in the future, but the ministry. So this draft law, it's harmful. Decentralization, again, it is threatening to decentralization. So summing up, I want to mention some metaphor, that the law cannot be reanimated, so to say, because it's toxic for everyone except for authors and beneficiaries. We can talk about the private control more, but this doesn't come into a good system. And it's not okay for all the participants of the construction market. It's not fair for all of them. So this is my opinion. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We can hear you. We heard you well. From Uzhhorod. We are coming to Odessa, and I want to make important Today we are talking about so those things that are mentioned in order for more people to be knowledgeable about these things, they are not having sort of personalized nature against certain field of representatives of certain business or the bodies of some state authorities or certain community. So one small detail in order for it not to sound as an advertisement, but each person later on can look it up in the internet. There is a portal which annually is determining the achievements in the field of construction activity. And it is done by constructors themselves because that's a business which is creating working places. They are paying taxes to local budgets. So this portal of the draft law 5655 last year had the nomination like the loss of the year. And our marathon is open today, and we have representatives of not only local governments and architects and local and also public persons and also representatives of the construction sector. Therefore, talking online, I would like to clarify that we are talking about certain norms of certain draft law that will impact negatively the activity of absolutely all the participants. And as far as we've been talking about private control, and the mayor of Slavuta paid attention to the fact what kind of a long path this small community in Khmelnytsky Oblast made in creating structural subdivision, it looks logical to listen to Odessa, the city with million population, and Dmitry Yuryevich, who is the head of the inspection department of management of architectural control of Odessa City Council. This is the structure that was offering to they were offered to change their powers. 3 words. Today, more professional community is watching us, but also citizens. The difference between monitoring, supervision, and control, I guess everybody understands. But I will ask representative from Odessa, Metro Yuryevich, please comment on that. Hello. Do you hear me well? Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Hello, I would like to go through the main thesis of the given law and what is especially not okay for our community, so to say, and why don't we agree with this law. When it was developed, we were participating actively. We sent our proposals and we're hoping that they will be taken into account and the city will get more powers on conducting architecture and construction control so that we can stop the illegal construction, so we can prevent some capturing of city land plots, because in our city, for example, the land costs like gold. I would like to pay your attention to such a norm that the notion of state culture of construction control is just cancelled, and the city control will be conducted by private structures, and this will depend fully on the constructor. And this is the authors and technical supervision. I would like to pay attention that our management received powers in 2016, and according to acting legislation, they should come to our management and objects SS1, SS2 during construction. According to the due to the objects that they are constructing if there are certain violations in construction. So I would like to mention that not a single application from such structures that are financed by constructors never came to us. But when conducting some planned checks, I mean planned, I would like to stress on that because planned checks, they give us the opportunity to check the structures that were approved by Kyriy, so to say. So we cannot go and check all of them, but we can check the subcontractor, and we can see that there are some things that are not in line with the project, or maybe some authors' supervision, not from the side of technical supervision. So since 2016, not a single time they came to us, but we saw the violation. So it's the first thesis which comes from this law. Secondly, I would like to pay your attention to the fact that now we will be able to control if this law will come into force and our president will sign that. We will be able to execute the city construction control only on objects of construction with whom we concluded the agreement. And I think that this fully limits our opportunities, our powers, because in case if we do not conclude the agreement, because we were asking to receive also SS3 when we were providing our offers, so they took what we've got even now. Well, one more thesis is city construction monitoring. The law is appealing with that, like you will have the opportunity to monitor the objects. If something illegal is happening, then you can put that into the registry, and these controlling private bodies, they are going to check it. Well, first of all, this limits, one more time, this limits our powers as local authorities. And the main thing is that this monitoring will be done without the permit to go to the object. And it's almost impossible to find violations if you don't go there. You can't even calculate the number of floors if the fence is high. You can't understand how many floors are there in the building and whether it's in line with the documentation or not. I would like to pay your attention one more time that this is a construction monitoring is only about the person who is ordering and the subcontractor. All the other subjects who are participating, again, we are coming back to supervision. That is, they are coming back to Kyriy. And this will be centralization of power. Because we were so happy when in 2016 we received these powers, and we never thought that they will return to the place from where they came to us in 2016. I would like to pay your attention to the fact what people are mostly speaking of, that lack of state control. And we cannot speak about lack of control, but there will be some appeals from the private persons, because they are coming to us so that we can check the fact whether the city construction legislation was violated. So in a lot of cases, the physical persons were natural persons. They were the ones who were initiating these checks. We have inspectors from our side, but it's not always that they can see the violations and conducting the monitoring of the region. Therefore, this, like applications for people, like their people who applied, they were a big part of the checks. And now this possibility is cancelled for people. People don't really like how things are at present. And from the moment when these committees started their work till present, not a single permit because the answers are not numerous, but they mentioned that they don't see the reasons for violating human rights and so on and so forth, and now people won't be able to, so the great public won't be able to impact this in no way. Mr. Dmitro, thank you very much. Let us stop here. Let us pause here because the next speaker said they have to continue, Thank you very much, Mr. Dmitro, that you paid attention to the citizens. Because indeed, this draft law, it's not only the pain for the professional communities or local authorities, it's also discriminating Ukrainians, citizens of the cities. And I thank you very much for this accent, because it's impossible to write some complaints for natural persons or to initiate some kind of checks, because they only can go to city control and with monitoring, and then further on they can just try to look at the fence, and that's it. So thank you very much for that. I would like to remind you that our whole Ukrainian marathon, Ukraine against 5655, is going on. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Valentin Demyanov, the city of Rivne. He is the head of the Regional Oblast Community of Architecture Chamber of National Union of Architects in Ukraine, the city of Rivne. Mr. Valentin, the floor is yours. Hello, everyone. My name is Demyan Valentin Oleksandrovich, architect, the city of Rivne. I'm working for 43 years as an architect. The questions I want to highlight are the issues of self-regulation organizations in this law. The thing is that self-regulation is the basis of European practice. And European practice, all of it, is on self-regulation. This system appeared long ago, and self-regulation is built on the fact that there is professional experience of performers, experience of those people who are knowledgeable in this profession. What do we have in this draft law? Here we've got the desire to expand the range of subjects who are working on certification, not the specialists who are certifying and architects who are giving permit for performing certain works, but there will be some other bodies. They are named the personal certification bodies. What kind of bodies are those? How do they act? Well, we can get some clues that recently the Ministry of Development of Communities and Territories and Infrastructure of Ukraine, they mentioned that such programs, they will be done in 5 higher educational institutions. So those who know a bit about Ukrainian system, they understand that educational institutions of ours, they are theoretical bodies that are teaching certain professional knowledge, but as for the deep practice, they don't have it. They don't have practical skills. And therefore, it is clear that such certification will lead to follow the level of professionality. Authors of the draft law, they are saying that they are developing architectural monopoly. What kind of architectural monopoly? Self-regulation is not, in principle, monopoly. So it's just like to blame Verkhovna Rada that it's a monopoly body for performing the legislative actions. However, in given case, in world practice, well, there are different moments in self-regulation. It's a priority of many institutions. Still, there is one, however. Everywhere there is a control of the organization or organizations that are specialist communities and various institutions, even if certification is done by state institutions, for example, in Great Britain. Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, as of today, has the draft law on self-regulation. It's under the number 7025. My colleagues also mentioned that there is an issue of the city construction code, and the city construction code should have all the positive and good things in itself, all the European, thing that is in line with self-regulation. As my colleagues mentioned today, it has to lead to a balanced and harmonious system. And that's the right thing. I would like to mention that I was really surprised that, again, the draft law 5655 that already has to be thrown away, they are getting that again. They are taking that and they are trying to promote that. And it is clear that even in the system of self-regulation, we can feel that those who are trying to push this document, they are taking into account only some corruption things. They don't need to have specialists here. Please excuse me, I have some problems with my camera. But I mentioned the main things. 5655. This law has to be gone. And we have to get the new and fair laws. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Valentin. I would like to give the floor to local self-government, Ms. Oksana. Thank you very much, and thank you, Iryna. So from Rivne, we give the floor to Mykolaiv. I would like to remind you that we all came here for the whole Ukrainian marathon, Ukraine against 5655. And I'm now asking for the position of Mykolaiv City Council to Ivalina Yuryeva, head of the Department of Architecture Control, Mykolaiv City Council. The floor is yours. Yeah, I am heading the department since 2019. And on each meeting with the ministry, it seems that the control is taken from us due to the fact that we are not succeeding in performing it. At the same time, the ministry is not informing the community about the fact that in March 20, it was stopped, and then in 2021, we regained our power. So for 1 year, we had no power. And then again in March, our control has stopped. So from 2020, the control, 2023, we've been conducting control only for 1 year and all the time. And we were paying attention of the ministry. We were trying to draw their attention to the fact that this control is improper because there is a lot of gaps. And we were taking speech at the ministry for many times. We were mentioning that they have to either increase our powers or they have to formulate a clear position. There is currently, we've been considering cases on illegal performance of instruction. We found out about that based on monitoring. There was criminal investigation on the fact that the issue of monitoring is not regulated. It's unclear how do we conduct that. Therefore, we have no right to go there just because we want to. So we won the case. This case lasted more than 2 years. That is, we have the opportunity to have this control, but regulate this issue. And I agree with Odessa who are saying that not a single technical supervision was not coming to us with the statement that there are some violations. So we never seen, not a single time in 4 years, we haven't seen some statements that the technical supervision or technical monitoring has something to say, some bad things to say. And we have a lot of refusals because they are built not according to state norms. I'm sorry, but 5655, will they solve these issues? No, it won't. The control will be taken from us again. We will get the monitoring. And what can we do if the community comes with the requirements that we had? So, for example, there was a 3 permit. So the house was damaged, and so the local authority could not say citizens that it's not within his powers. So local authorities were mentioning that this is not within our powers, but nobody was listening to us. So now the local powers can say that I can do nothing to the constructor because this is not within my powers. The people won't understand this at all, you know. Thank you very much, Ms. Alena. Thank you very much for mentioning the position of Mykolaiv City Council. And I think that now the local self-governments, like the architects, will join them and they will mention why Ukraine is against 5655. Yes, and in this moment, I would like to ask to turn on the video of Mr. Dmitro Nesteka. This is architect and editor, and all the architects know him as the person who is issuing professional architectural literature. Now, Mr. Dmitro is a military servant. He is on the front line. He's defending our dignity, our freedom. Professional. He sent us his video to Ukrainians for this marathon. So, Mr. Dmitro, the floor is yours. Good morning or good day, friends. Yesterday, I listened to my colleagues, friends. We were communicating about the law, which is more than just promoted by our dear authorities, maybe not dear already. The law we are talking about is the law which will give us the opportunity to rebuild the country, to build it free, nice, and successful, or as it seems to me. I did not study that in full because currently I don't have powers and time. This might become the black part of the country, so to say, and the reason why we will never really form the Marshall Plan. We won't receive money for reconstruction. We won't receive money for improving our country. And in general, we won't receive money. If your parliament is making the comments that the law is corruptional, if society and many professionals who are our authorities now, they say that it's corruptional, it seems to me that this law already will just kill our mother Ukraine. I wanted to record this video with the quotes and links and so on and so forth, but I will record it so that I can just touch a bit the other law. And I want to warn that many people, just like me, God let us, they will survive in spite of what our authorities are expecting. They will come back. And if such law will be enforced, then it will be bad for here, our authorities. I'm not threatening, but it won't be okay for you. Ole, you asked me to record the video. I can record it just like that, with soft threats and promises to punish for everything that now is happening in our country. Here we are standing, and we hope that we will withstand. We even hope to win, to have the victory, but they are behind our back. More and more often, we hear that in front of us are bad people and behind are bad people. Please, our authorities, just use your minds. This is the kind of the video that I recorded. I'm not ready to record any other. With respect, Metro Respeka, editor, I'm issuing professional architectural literature, constructor and architect. Think, please. I can just say a big honor to Mr. Dmitro and all the architects who are defending our Ukraine in the armed forces. We are with you. And I would like to remind you that we had the whole Ukrainian marathon, Ukraine against 5655. And now I would like to give the floor to the city of Lviv. I'm really asking the speakers, we are out of our schedule a bit. Please shorten your speech up to like 3 minutes because we have a lot of speakers, those who want to speak also. Therefore, please shorten your speeches. I'm asking you, and I give the floor to Sheremeta Mykola and Kuzmik Igor. Mr. Mykola and Mr. Kuzmak, they are representing Lviv National Community of Architects of Ukraine regional part and regional part of architecture chamber. So, Mr. Mykola, the floor is yours. Greetings, colleagues. If you hear me, please just nod. Yeah, everything works. Thank you. I'd like to speak with such a message about the insurance. And I would like to mention that the insurance in our time, it's about nothing. Now I'm sitting in the premise in my room. Yeah, I have insurance. Behind me, there is project documentation, which is not insured. I was trying to have insurance, but not a single insurance company agreed to do that. In our military time, at the time of the global catastrophe, this insurance institute is just absent because it's force majeure and not a single company they won't like to sign that in case of just some bad things. So when we had the opportunity to organize the Institute of Insurance, then with this law will defend the interests of big constructors. And the law provides for it that just 2 participants are getting insurance. These are expert organizations and city construction control that in prospects are becoming the private. And so we have this experience with this, and maybe the inspection will also become private. Where does it lead us? So it leads to the fact that the amount of money that are given, they will be given to big investors, and somehow these amounts are in millions of euros. So we have 3 million of euros for SS2, SS3, 5 million euros. This means that the private investor comes to the new premise, they stop the construction, they are putting some fine, and investor, due to the fact that they have some insurance case, they get insurance, and it might be twice higher than the price of the object. Isn't that corruption? I think so. I think that there will be some agreements on construction platforms, and correspondingly there will be some structures that will ensure their own interests. Therefore, at the end, I would like to mention that the law, which is not really the law till the end, it was adopted or it wasn't. We were discussing that in peaceful time, so it's not in line with the martial law conditions. So I encourage you to forget about this law already and to get ready to task on rebuilding Ukraine and all the necessary things. But I would like to encourage and to warn all the participants so that we don't want to the city construction code to be the distraction for further promotion of 5655. Thank you very much, Mykola. Do we have Igor Kuzmak? I thought you are going to join us together. Yeah, thank you very much. So I give the floor to Igor Kuzmak, head of regional community of Lviv Architecture Palette Chamber in Lviv. Mr. Igor? Yes, hello. Glory to Ukraine. As a head of architecture palette of Lviv regional department, I would like to mention that today, those who are in the room and those who are on the screen of our monitors are actually representatives of various organizations, and our organization is also a public organization, so we are presenting not just our personal interests as architects, but also NGOs. So my life experience is quite big, because at local levels, at state levels, in architecture and different resources, I was one of those who wrote a range of the initiatives on the Land Code of Ukraine 2002. But after I got acquainted with the draft law 5655, I realized that in Ukraine, it's I think I would like to call it a peak of anti-corruption pretending that we can name 5655. Today, we already mentioned certain things. So the terminology, the appeals, and the things in our legislation, they are saying that there are like one things we begin with and totally other things when we are coming to an end. So I would like to address those who are there in the marathons. I think that there should be also other community mayors of cities, because this law is violating laws of like rights of architects. It's not that much, but most of all, it is violating the rights of local communities, and the reason for this law is coming back from the 90s, because people provided the powers to the level of Verkhovna Rada, the level of ministries, and every time we see new draft laws that are impacting poorly the development of Ukraine. Of course, I won't mention all the things, but if there are certain problems in the society and the society is developing, and Ukrainian society is developing actively, so of course there should be some mechanism that how to provide regulatory laws that are making something simpler, better, and with more prospects. And this draft law is making it just 180 degrees other way. So recently we were talking about the monitoring on local authorities. So ladies and gentlemen, how can it happen so that local authorities cannot control the construction? Yes, I understand we are talking about military units when still there should be some state architectural control. The things that are happening on the territory of the community, it doesn't matter. The territory is under the lease or private ownership. This is a territory where certain activity is being conducted, and all of a sudden there is something smelly there, or something is exploding there, or some technical issues, and you cannot get in there because legislation doesn't allow you to go there. It's not okay, especially if we are talking about private structures. Dear ladies and gentlemen, this is the law that makes huge conflicts for the society, for the future, between the constructors and investors, who with their own money are creating kind of independent and private inspectors, but they will write what they will say what they are told, and they are going to your competitor, and they are saying that the competitor does something wrong, so they can use that for their own needs, and nobody is protected, nor the city, nor the society. And the thing that I don't like most is that why architects were are people like out of the society? Can you name at least a single profession or at least one draft law that is imposing such big fines as the architects have? Why? Because as a rule, architects are people who have really wide education, beginning with the knowledge of the material on the construction, adding up with the social problems of neighbors and everything that is happening in the neighboring quarter. So this is a person who understands all the problems that can emerge in this society and what are the consequences of that. But many people don't like it. And in order for such person who is representing the interests of authorities, because they have to act in accordance with the laws, as of today they have huge fines. So maybe medical workers will take this as offense, but sometimes there's a lot of mistakes. But when the person dies on the surgery table, everything, like how it ends up, first they bury the person, there is a funeral, and then they know that something should happen. Mr. Ihor, here we started this marathon, all marathon about the 5655 is dead, has died, and you are coming to that. So from architects to doctors, so before you, people mentioned that there's no sense to try to heal this. So thank you very much, because you mentioned the opinion of the architects from Lviv region. I would like to ask the Lviv city authorities, deputy head of Lviv city, Mr. Zubach, about what position does Lviv have, and local authorities about 5655, the personal position of Mr. Lubomir. I know that you are doing a lot for all the society to understand 5655, and if possible, Mr. Lubomir Zubach, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Ms. Oksana. Hello to everyone. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to heroes. The position of Lviv City Council, not just my personal, but also the city head, from the very beginning, it was articulated, and we mentioned that we consider this draft law to be harmful, and we consider that it can lead to very difficult consequences that will impact us many years to come. Working in local self-governments, and here we have a lot of colleagues of ours, everybody knows that any construction which is taking place in the community is perceived by citizens critically or with alert. And this is natural, because this is impacting the environment of their residency. It changes this, and it also can change that negatively. And it is obvious that in such a case, the members, where are they coming? They are coming to the authority which is the closer to them. This is local self-government, and this is the principle of subsidiarity. This is what it's mentioning. So by law 5655, this law is written in such a manner that the local authorities don't have the real levers of power for the city construction, but when they are taking these levers from us, I would like to mention that everybody who's present here, representatives of the communities, they have to understand that the public responsibility, they will not take this responsibility from us, because we will still have this responsibility. I realized that till the end, after the last post in Facebook of the head of the committee of the Verkhovna Rada, Ms. Olena Shulyak, and it was like a theater of Zankovetsky in the city of Lviv, and the facade is in the poor condition. And she said that it's the power, the city power, who is guilty. But she forgot that it's in the state ownership. And people have to make very simple things. The state should provide the money to the state structure who is in charge of the theater, and they can improve the situation. Why am I mentioning that? I guess that I finally realized that this is the concept that they want to implement by applying the law 5655. That is, the decisions will be made by state structures, ministries, city construction chamber. The constructors will build it, they will control themselves, and the local authorities will bear all the responsibility because people will come to them. And people's deputies, they will say that whatever, even if you don't have powers, you were elected by people. Solve these problems. I think that this is showing the problems. And I support that because it's a personal point of view. It has to be demonstrated, it has to be shown, but it becomes, sincerely, I would like to mention that it becomes scary. The things that are happening, they're crazy. A lot of things had been said about the construction companies, about registration that will be conducted, and also that automatically it is brought to use. But I am also worried about the issues of the data for construction, city construction conditions and limitations, and I think that here there are also certain things that probably are one of the most dangerous because everything is written in such a manner that in order to eliminate the local authorities maximally from impacting a certain view of buildings and the parameters. You know that in principle now the legislation is written in such a manner that there are only just a few parameters that can be provided for in city construction conditions. So now we can ask the constructors to show how it should look like. So they are showing this to us. And in the new law 5655, they forbid directly. Because the city construction, you cannot get any graphic materials, no agreement, no the conclusion of the city council. All of this is forbidden. If you ask that, then probably it will be perceived as corruption. Well, and the reasons for refusal, they are limited. They are really formal, That is, let us say, so you cannot provide for any other reasons that are there in the law. For example, if now they are not in line with the city construction documentation, then in some parts these points are eliminated, they are taken from there, and they have to be in line with the land, like the target aim of the land. So for example, this is residential premise, a public premise, this is the house, this is school, and you can transform that whatever you like it, what is best for you. But if local self-governments, they will find reasons to refuse and to explain how. But this is a scheme planned by our colleagues. I remember, Ms. Oksana, you asked us to be brief, so I'm coming to an end, and if this is the tone of our discussion about the law, which is dead, as it was mentioned by Ms. Anna, and it's time to, so to say, bury the law. Yeah, it is dead. But I perceive that as a Frankenstein, people want to make it alive and launch that to our society, and it will cause a lot of harm. But I am confident that our president is wise, and he did not sign this law. He won't sign it because he's fighting together with us, with one Frankenstein in the east of Ukraine, and he, just like we, understands that we don't need one more Frankenstein. Thank you very much for your metaphorical thinking as the architect. I am trying to be just like you are. Thank you very much. I would like to remind all of those who are listening to us, we have the whole Ukrainian Marathon, Ukraine Against 5655, just as Mr. Lubomir called it, Frankenstein. So now I would like to give the floor to the city of Zaporizhia. They are with us, Mr. Dmitro Romanov, head of Zaporizhia Regional Community of Architecture Chamber. Mr. Dmitro, the floor is yours. Please be very brief because we are out of our schedule. Okay, I represent 47 certified architects, part of which are under occupation. And we are waiting for these territories to be liberated. So I would like to briefly pay attention to unfair part of the law 5655, which is already dying about responsibility for the violations in the field of city construction activities and projecting. Why? Because the big fines that are put to the architect responsible for any violation, there is unclear understanding of the violation itself, and also the rules of qualification are unclear. And this being unclear creates the possibilities to create certain violations, and discrimination size of fines is not proportionate for the kind of activity, and they are humiliating the architect. The cost of it is 3 or 4% from the cost of construction, but this is the main reason of development of high fines, and we have to close our eyes to certain corruption connection between the constructor and the control body, understanding that these issues. Yep. Can I turn off the microphones of those who are not speakers? Thank you. Igor Kuzmak in particular. Metro, we can hear you. Please finalize what is unfair from the side of fines. Yeah, in cities, it's that they are participating in corruption. And it is, again, in this draft law, we are losing respect and everything. It should not remain in the country who is aiming for European values. So the result of this situation is that we have to have the real violations and not the imagined ones. And there should be responsibility to any legal natural person, no matter from their position and condition. I would like to remind one more time that when we are talking about the centralized approach for our specialty, I consider it necessary that we do not consider the law 5655 as necessary for further activity of city construction activities. Thank you very much, Mr. Dmitro. I would like to add the example of my own architecture practice. I would like to remind you that our fines were introduced since 2011. When then the secondary legal act was signed on regulation of city construction activity, my company probably was the first one who received fine for 350,000 hryvnias. Now I can be mistaken because it was back in 2013. I would like to mention how it works. The fines, they never are balancing responsibility, because when you get a fine for 350,000 hryvnias, it was like $150,000, and then the person for inspection is calling you and says, dear Miss Anya, you can bring me half of the amount and I will just close this resolution. So this is how fines are fines are working. This is not the tool that can make people bear responsibility. We have to create possibilities for development and not to discriminate by fines, and actually to make a fruitful ground for the corruption. So now I would like to invite our next city, and I would like to give the floor to Master Tatiana Hennadievna, head of Chernihiv Regional Community of Architecture Chamber. Ms. Tatiana, the floor is yours. Please be brief. Thank you very much. Hello, dear participants of the marathon. Tatiana Mazur, Chernihiv, the head of the Architecture Peloton Zone. For almost 2 years, we and our attention is paid to draft law 5655. The main provisions of this draft law were causing an ambiguous reaction of the society and acute criticism from specialists. In addition to what we've heard today already, I would also like to pay your attention to one of the aspects of this law. I mean that in spite of the fact that the draft law is not reflecting the value aspects of city construction, still there is one principle which significantly is impacting and is not helpful for the long path of decentralization of Ukraine that we've undertaken already. What do I mean? In part of state policy in the field of city construction activity, part 5, Article 15, we can see that the provisions, I would like to pay your attention, the provision of the adopted program of complex reconstruction of oblasts is a component of the basic data for development of programs for complex reconstruction of territories and territorial communities. But where's our decentralization? Vice versa, territorial communities have to collect data, especially in this situation that we are living in right now. They have to analyze the situation. They have to form their programs of reconstruction, and based on these programs, the program of reconstruction should be formed of both oblasts and further on the program for rebuilding Ukraine. That is this principle which is included to this law. Well, it gives us a dangerous signal. Where? That the decisions that will be made on the level of oblast, they will be brought to territorial communities, and they have to take into account these decisions, maybe even without discussions. So this is going to be a kind of the will, so to say, and they have to solve these issues. In addition, they can be also related to the issue of financing. If the funds for resolving these problems will be centralized, and they will come via the state authorities, I mean oblast structures, then the local self-governments, local levels, that is territorial communities, they are becoming dependent as local authorities on making decisions and also financing their issues. And here we already have some corruption risks on resolving these issues. Taking into account that the process of decentralization in Ukraine almost happened, we have to change also the priorities. The program of reconstruction of territorial communities have to be the basic data for rebuilding oblasts further on. And I also paid attention to the fact that from the beginning of our communication, Ms. Anna mentioned that investors we are going to communicate with further on and who are aiming to come to Ukraine and to help to rebuild Ukraine, they want to communicate not with the state authorities, but they want to talk to territorial communities. Therefore, I think that we should pay attention to this fact. And still, these powers, decentralization, and also the territorial communities should work as necessary. Therefore, I would like to mention also that in these 2 years, that is to reduce the tension that we have from this law in society 5655. We have to solve the main. We did not succeed in solving the main issues. The situation is really acute still. And taking into account that the draft law 5655, it is not working, so then we should not make efforts to reanimate that. And we can consider the law as the one that is not proper, that should not take place. But I was talking about rebellion communities because our next step is going to be reconstruction and editing and making city construction documentation on reconstruction of our settlements, of our cities. And I think that this issue is very relevant at this time because we have to solve these issues with the new realities, taking into account the experience that we've got as of now. This is destruction of settlements, occupation. This is different reasons. And I think that these issues should be resolved, and I truly hope that creation of the law, a city construction code at this time, is really a relevant thing, and these issues have to be resolved on this level. So I think that our cities and our settlements is the environment for us. For those who live in these cities, they have to be reliable. Just like we are talking about persons, that a person should be resilient to stress, also our settlements and cities have to be stress resilient. Thank you very much, Tatiana Mazur, Chernihiv. Thank you very much, the city of Chernihiv, so local self-governments. I would like to ask for be very brief. Taras published in the city of Lviv, please. Yeah, hello everyone. What can I say about the draft law 5655? I have the opinion that it was written not by the specialists, but by huge constructors who once received fines from the state inspection, and now they are trying to take their revenge with this law. In my opinion, they have provision that even earlier, when they were adopting the law and creating the United Territorial Communities, where they wrote that the delegated powers will be for the whole newly created territorial communities. So we still haven't received that. We received that only for the city of Lviv. So we came to the ministry with a request, and they don't give us any answers. They are avoiding these questions, and that's it. So as for the law 5655 itself, yeah, it was mentioned already today, but I wanted to model a situation how the check itself will happen so that everybody understands that this is not the decentralization, this is not increase of powers for local self-governments, but it is full centralization and full control of the ministry over all the people. So we are taking into account the object for construction, and we have some appeal that the citizen of Ukraine considers that it's illegal construction, and the state bodies they don't come to the construction plot, but they stand aside, they are looking, okay, there is 3-meter fence. This representative doesn't see whether there are 2 parkings underground or 1. We cannot conduct the proper monitoring. Or, for example, the last floor, according to the project, has to be technical, and as a matter of fact, they are making it residential. We won't notice that if we cannot enter the construction plot. But still, even if we include private inspection together with this control body, we can draw to responsibility only the person who ordered that, and the order, and all the other is a city construction chamber. But if it was developed with violation of city construction, it was given to some other people, like here you can build it, and as a matter of fact, we cannot bring anyone to responsibility, because the orderer says, I'm not a specialist, they made a project, I just got it adopted. So it's like nobody is responsible, and it's a closed circle, as a matter of fact. Unfortunately, the connection is unstable. I thank you very much for your speech, and I would like to agree with the fact that indeed, if the citizen is making appeal, then he can cause only the monitoring, and the monitoring comes to private controller who works for the constructor, actually, and this is where the check comes to an end. And as far as you recall, the city construction chamber, I am asking Mr. Julian Chaplinsky to talk about this topic. This is the expert on draft law. What are the risks? What are the dangers in the city construction chamber? We have the video. Greetings, dear friends. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join this wonderful event. I'm really glad that there is a lot of indifferent people who are still indifferent to pseudo reforms of city construction 5655. I am going to highlight in one of the aspects. I think those who are watching my blog, I separately was mentioning this, and there were certain comments of our state authorities, but let us be sincere. A lot of things have changed already, and the digital system started working on city construction or provision of documents. And I'm really sad to hear that in the context of having corruption, like we digitalized and everything became okay. Yes, I am really glad that we have this digitalization, but like we are trying to save our nature, and we have digital signatures. It's very good, and nobody is saying that it's bad, but there are some hidden aspects that people are trying to avoid, and this is a city construction chamber. When I've been working as a deputy minister, and actually I was just a beginner, so to say, I had some of my offers for reform Dhabi in particular. My opinion, and not just my opinion, because the Prime Minister and my chef, Mr. Honcharuk, he was saying that we have to deregulate quickly all the ministries. We had to stop making them like masters of some field of economy or some field of impact, and turn it to those who are making just like policy. We are developing the rules for the game, and we see the initiatives in 5655, the city construction chamber, which has to cope with all the things. They have to get involved into almost all the scandalous constructions in the city and form the opinion of the court. And in my opinion, it's nothing more than regulation, not deregulation of the field. And also, it seems interesting to see this kind of a random members of the council, and first 4 or 5 people, the minister and deputies, they are the same, and all the rest have to be taken from the city or village councils or the United Territorial Communities, who should come to Kyiv somehow. They should participate somehow, and so on. I'm really surprised by that, actually, because my experience shows that when there was a construction boom, activists and real citizens, they were naming each second building like the scandalous one, and they were trying to stop the construction. In Lviv, we had a commission out of activists and representatives of city council who were considering each of these constructions. The constructors were present, and their lawyers who were explaining that everything is okay, we are not scandalous, we want to act within the framework of legislation and so on. It lasted for like hours, usually like 3 hours, and it's just the city of Lviv. So how the council that has to come with certain like periodically, yeah? So it's unclear, actually. It's nothing more than the formation of the opinion of the court, because if the court is engaged in city construction, then they should do it. So it seems to me that it's just a corruption pyramid, and I'm totally against any city construction chambers who are going to consider like the objects. I am for deregulation of this field, and I want the cities to create their own control bodies. They can stop, for them to be able to stop construction. And it's not that there should be some scandalous signage, but also it has to be created quickly. And they have to understand that if somebody is abusing the powers, then we can select another person. We can elect another person. And honestly speaking, to get the minister or the prime minister, you know perfectly you how to get the whole Maidan. And it's not the event that is happening every day, and it's really hard to cope with that afterwards. That's it from my side. In general, you'll perfectly know what is 5655, and the main thing that I would like to end with. I'm so sorry that for such a long time, so many people and so many European institutions, they are talking to our government, even the president, with the fact that we are asking you not to do this because the consequences will be very bad, and the planning is really poor for fighting with the corruption and so on, but it's not a program for planning the cities. And so that we have to change that after the victory, when we stand on our own, so to say, we can do something, but not to simplify the construction, which is not necessary. So I thank you for your attention, and I truly hope that some people of the authorities will hear us. Thank you. Thank you very much. And as far as at the beginning, we promised, and we had a lot of discussions on the text of the draft law, I would like to invite to the floor Oksana Prodan, the advisor of the chairman of the Association of Cities of Ukraine, People's Deputy of Ukraine, of the 7th and 8th convocations of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, so she can give some answers to the questions. Thank you very much. Thank you to Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Unfortunately, you don't have so many opportunities here, so that everybody who wants to say their word about 5655 to take the 4-hour marathon, like, I want to mention that very, very quickly, but I can say why Ukraine is against 5655. Not everything that is here, just I will show you some separate issues if I will cope. Yeah, I did it. Thank you very much. Probably you can't see that. Do you see that properly? So the list, like in general, the Association of Cities of Ukraine and all these parts is giving certain articles of the draft law, why this or that draft law is destroying introduction of digital system, is stimulating the construction, illegal construction, is being at least also the state function of control and supervision is not assigned to business entities. The public is deprived of the rights to initiate mandatory construction inspections and monopolization of admission to the market, violation of the rights of landowners, corruption of the urban spheres there, and also capabilities of local self-government bodies are limited. So if you're interested, you can see all the details under the Association of Cities. I will not explain about all the parts, more. I will briefly comment on some of those.
Кілька моментів. До цього спікери говорили.
But some moments before, we mentioned that the idea of digital system is being destroyed. Corruption norms that are manually included to 5655 are covered by cool possibilities, cool opportunities that are acting today without 5655. So actually, this project is destroying the idea that has to be implemented. again, we've been talking already that private controlling body cannot ensure anything if they are taking money from the constructor whom they have to control. Then the state function of control and monitoring is given to undertakings, and then again, responsibility 60,000 hryvnias for multi-storied building. If something is wrong, 250 maximum 1,000 hryvnia. If you did not control the multi-storied building properly, so it's like the person can do anything they want in their construction. For each citizen of Ukraine, the cost of construction will increase because the cost of documentation is increasing. Here we can see where in which articles this is happening, and also in many moments the rights of the owners of land plots are violated. We show that in the civil code and also in the law and regulation of city construction activity. So everything is provisioned for by the principle, like if the owner of the land plot doesn't mind and nobody has to ask, then you can build, you can take that into exploitation, you can make whatever you want if he doesn't see your documents, for example. And what a moment why today against 5655, they are like not only specialists, professionals, architects, local governments, but also the community, because 5655 is creating opportunities to build without control and is limiting the activists in any way to control these processes. And here we are again providing the articles that provide the for in the draft of 5655. So, the draft law, it's very important for me. It's not the law. Those who are mentioning this, yeah, we agree to speak of that, but it's a draft law that has to die as a draft law, and we want to switch to new and necessary for everyone system. I thank one more time to Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. I thank to all those 42,000 of citizens of Ukraine who voted for the petition to the president of Ukraine so that he issues a veto. I thank all the thousands of deputies of the councils who voted for the president to veto the draft law, and thank you for this draft law to be stuck, and we can talk about how we will prepare the following legislation. Thank you very much for the details. I would like to remind you that on the website of Association of Cities of Ukraine, we have the details. You can download that and you can review that. We have two more speakers actually, and I would like to ask whether we have Mr. Yuri Verbovetsky in touch with us, who has to tell us what is wrong with the principle of silent agreement and issues related to the memorials of Ukraine. So Mr. Yuri is at the city of Ternopil. He is the architect of Ukraine and the head of Ternopil Community of Architecture Council, vice president of National Community. So Whole Ukrainian Marathon. Mr. Yuri, please be brief. Thank you very much. I will try to be very brief. In addition to that, I am also the practicing architect for almost like 30 years. And I am the author of many projects of restoration and construction and historical environment, and I understand properly the mechanisms that are working for the use, for the benefit of historical environment. And all the time, like we can see, because this law 5655, it is negative in many fields, and it is also negative in the field of preservation of cultural heritage. That is this part is also important. So the law offers narrowing the rights on the local level, and actually this is about like one of such important aspects. It's about the approval of the drafts of construction in historical areas and with the memorials of architecture. What is happening? It is provisioned or provided for that no one from the local authorities will be able to invite the person to present the decisions on the consultative board or city construction board with the main architect of the city. That is, as a matter of fact, those people who are competent, who are responsible for development of the city, they won't be able to participate in any mechanism. They won't be able to impact and to how our cities to be harmonious, to have the cultural heritage, and to develop the historical part of cities of our country. And just as you mentioned, Ms. Anna, it is also dangerous to have this provision about automatic approval of project documentation. That is, it is provided for that in case of if there won't be like a certain term, then a draft documentation is approved automatically. And of course, this will be used by all the constructors who are not planning to align, they are not planning to stick to the historical environment. So this will not be useful. And then the cities will become not attractive, and that is what is happening as of now. And also the perception of the architectural heritage will be distorted. So we have to develop the totally new draft law, which will be maximally close to European legislation, which will promote the construction of economically sustainable cities, but at the same time, they will promote preservation and development of historical construction. Observing how this draft law 5655 is promoted and how much time it has been promoted and what kind of negative consequences are there, with no attempts even to recognize that it is not according to the request of the society and our foreign partners. I clearly can mention that this draft law has no perspectives. So we should not even talk about that. It is dead. We should forget about it. And a huge hope we as professional architects are putting for creation of new legislation, the city construction code, and how it is launched right now, how it is developed. This gives us all the chances to believe that it will become the new system of rules and interaction of all the participants of city construction process. And there is hope that it will take into account the requirements and preservation of cultural heritage and in general city construction. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for such inspiration in your speech. And we have one more speech not planned. Alexei Shematyuk, the military servant, a good friend of mine, the intelligence service, marine intelligence service. He said that from the front line he can join us, and with big gratitude, I would like to give the floor to him. And Alexei, in addition to being an architect, now he is a military servant. He is also the head of Kyriy, a part of National Architects of Ukraine. Losha, I would like to hear you and to see you very much. Oh dear. Company, do you hear me? Yes, we can hear you perfectly. I'm really glad to be invited, and I'm really grateful for your information. I will be brief. I have two theses. The thesis denial and the thesis, like the offer, the denial about city construction form 5655, I would name that the attempt of city construction reform, because this draft law is quite serious legal construction, which is making amendments to 4 codes and many other acting laws. And I would offer to increase a bit the frame of observation, our observation and analysis, and to look not at the consequences, but at the reasons of this draft of city construction reform, because unfortunately we are looking at hands of the people who are trying to make some tricks. So all the key changes after the first reading actually were made before the new year 21-22. I mean, the year of 21 and 22. That was like the makeup coverage. So let us see what do they offer to make this 5655. They offer to make redistribution of the leverages of impact in the process of creation of the real estate objects. So the number of real estate objects creates the city environment. So we can call that the city construction. And this draft law, this reform, is developed in the interest of the capital. Not in the interest of the society, but in the interest of the capital. We have to understand that this conflict of interest is as old as, in general, the profession of the architect. Not only. The age of this is approximately like that, and it's okay. And we need to have the consensus of the interests of capital and socium. Because socium is a consumer of the product of capital in the field of creation of objects of real estate. We are the main users as those who are leasing that, those who are buying, citizens who live in this space. This city space is forming our understanding. So it is necessary to have the consensus of interest of the society and capital. This attempt of city construction reform is violating this consensus. It's violating the balance, and it is making the situation that we've got worse. And this leads to tension in the society and the conflict. We have to understand clearly that the capital, again, bought the power that has to perform the function between the social and the capital. So now our state is not performing that function because the state bought the capital of developers, of those who get benefits from the capital, from the real estate, and it's a very impactful community who can allow themselves to buy power in this sense. Distribution of the leverages of impact. We also have to mention that the main locomotive in the frontman of the city construction reform is the head of the party, Слуга народу, and the head of the party which is at power. So we have to perceive it as a position of party, because she is the head of it. That is obviously, it is supported by quite a huge political range of people. And a political responsibility for that is borne by the political party and the president of Ukraine, the party and the acting president. And in order for us to change this proposition of the agreement between the society and the capital, we have to raise our level with the available tools, because we can't implement, we cannot realize the needs of our society, military needs, and the consequences. I would like to mention why do we hold to that so tight, and why the president still hasn't vetoed and signed, but he hasn't signed that. We all understand that the war will come to an end, and the biggest money that will come to Ukraine will be for construction. And already, I mean, they, as a political class of power in Ukraine, they want to divide the money. They want to share the money. And now we are discussing the draft law, which was formed before the big war. The draft law hasn't reflected that. There were no amendments. So this is something that is not impacting this process. We don't need it in the process. So the capital did not change and the construct did not change when the authorities play forward the role of the capital. That is the first part. The second part, my offer. We need, like today's dialogue about the city construction reform, new city construction reform. The dialogue which Anna Bodnar started, the deputy also of the party Slava Narodu, but she has the other opinion because she is an architect, she is professional, she understands the consequences. So we need, in the format of this new city construction reform, we have to make it in the prism of a new agreement with the society. So the city space is forming the personality, it's forming our life. Thank you very much. That's it from my side. Thank you very much. Hold on. Thank you very much for everything, especially for defending us. Dear colleagues, we finished the block of our speeches. And in messengers, we were making attempts to answer the questions that you were writing online. If now some of you still have some questions to speakers, then please, in Zoom, you have the opportunity to raise your hand. And we can also read your questions, and then some of the speakers will answer, depending on whom you're talking to. Maybe somebody in the room has questions to speaker. No questions? Okay, yeah, please. Then please present yourself. Just take the microphone. Viktor Kobunov, architect, Ukraine Agroprom. My question is about the legislative acts on visualization, because somehow we hate our floors and so on, but the appearance, I mean, maybe we need to give some points for that, or I don't quite understand. There was even a question regarding, the architect from Dnipropetrovsk. He was comparing the multi-storied building with some architectural buildings. But if we include Michelangelo and the church in Vatican, it's about the tastes, but it has to be. It's the expertise of the architect, and it's not included. So the dead draft law, but I will make an attempt to answer how I understood you, because our colleague, the main architect of Dnipro, Dmitro Valyuk, he meant that now, in general, the practice is that the role of architecture community is not taken into account in their attitude to the construction, and the protocol in the art decision 5655 doesn't bring anything new to that, and it's just making it worse because it is dictating to communities that they can have the two parameters. But this is what was meant by Dmitro Valyuk. So in this case, mentioning that in this case it will be this way. So it's that they have the same two parameters because it's a masterpiece of world architecture, and it is described like in the same manner as a multi-story building. So he meant that the buildings are impacting people, and this draft law is just even bigger regress than we have. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. As far as I understand, we have no questions online, and so in the room, yes. How the city? The microphone, take the microphone, please, because otherwise, yeah. There were lots of questions about how the city will lose from 5655. What about just the ordinary person? What will be the problem with the ordinary people? For people to understand. Thank you very much for your question. Of course, with the presentation, there are certain norms, and we are always working in order to show how it is written, and each person can get acquainted with that. So, in simple words, we begin with the simple 3 words: monitoring, control, and observation. So, monitoring is when you are looking at what is happening around you. Control is when you have the certain impact. You can influence what is happening. Then observation is looking at those who are controlling the activity. If for you as a citizen, I can explain that in very simple words. One morning, with the norms that are written there, you come to your yard directly. And there is some object being constructed. You're asking, what is constructed here? And then the private person says, like, you shouldn't care about that. You come to the municipality and you say something is being built, and the municipality says, sorry, according to new legislation, just like you, we can make visual monitoring, and we can say that something is being constructed there. So you can write a claim. Hi to the center. Here are some details about how they submit that via system and so on. By the way, there's information how they should be mentioned, but you have to be okay with the fact that something is built, and you also don't have the right to test it. So correspondingly, for you, maybe you will like what they will build there. Maybe you won't, in the given case. So your impact as a person who is living in any settlement, it is like your role is reducing. To come to someone who can defend your rights, again, correspondingly, it is destroyed. So we've been mentioning a lot. This is about this other constructor who has all the documents and is conducting legally their activities. They can face the similar situation. And the issue here is not just about some powers of local authorities and professional community or central executive body. It's not the issue of money. It's the constitutional issues of our rights and possibilities. So that is why this discussion with this marathon, Ukraine against 5655, we wanted to put a full stop so that not even some thoughts and development of some legal acts should be there, because the state should give money from the budget, hire specialists. So we do not have to have that, because before that there were just 3 dots and all the people mentioned their position. So it's a fact. The draft law died. There is good initiative. By the way, many people mentioned, I would like to remind you that back in 2020, the first time under the president of Ukraine, local authorities mentioned the idea on city construction code. And many countries in the world, they have these city construction codes. And this reform in the framework of decentralization was considered as one of the components given to us and we issued the White Book of City Construction. Correspondingly, there is International City Construction Code, and many countries join it. The countries where we want to be neighbors to those countries in European society. So therefore, now there's an issue that there's a working group on city construction code. It's working with inclusion. It's open. And our today's event was also open, inclusive. We were trying to speak about certain technical issues that won't be helpful further on. But I would ask all of you to put all the efforts in working on the new standards of city construction, because each one of us is not living somewhere in the air, in the space, but we are living in settlements and under the conditions of war. And we can take example of Great Britain. In 1942, there was a special committee on reconstruction, and this committee was working on technical issues. And after the end of war, the systems, they change absolutely the city construction activity in the country, and even such tiny issues as the field of energy supply led it to better regime. Thank you very much. That is this law. Frankenstein will make cities Frankensteins. I would like Mr. Oleksandr to answer this question. How do you think, from the point of view of architecture, how can the city change if 5655 will be enforced? Oh, I can just add to the things mentioned by Mr. Slobozhan. There will be higher number, again, if you talk with the same illustration, that if there is some platform, and if there is some space and they can build a house, so it can be built just like the constructor planned it, and we live in this situation where there is deficit of places in the kindergartens at schools, and here there will be additional workload and additional discomfort. So the city will be responsible in front of the citizens. Why don't have some additional spaces, additional this is in kindergartens, and the constructor is not responsible for anything. So, dear colleagues, I offer to end here because, questions? Go ahead. Important question. Why 5655 will strengthen corruption? I think the colleagues already revealed this topic. I will try to mention it. Actually, there is a lot of bad things in this draft law. We haven't mentioned the construction amnesty. We haven't mentioned the control when they have control, the constructors have control, and all others get just the observation of the specialists and so on. And this is done by city construction. So I'd like to answer the issue why 5655 is strengthening corruption. It's not reducing it. I will even mention to you in line with this draft law. So I have it written here. If you open the explanation note to the draft law, it is written there that according to analytical report and provision of observation activity prepared by the Center of Policy and Legal Reforms among the most corruption bodies, and so on and so forth. So in the explanatory note, there's link to a report prepared by the Center of Political and Legal Reforms. They took that as the basic one. If we open the report, if we are doing that, then there are risks that experts are highlighting as the biggest risk possible, with the biggest factor from all the corruption risks that can take place in the legislation of Ukraine. So a combination of executive powers and functions on creating policies and provision of administrative services, attention, they are mentioning the study with the biggest corruption risk mentioned, and this corruption risk is included to 5655, and the powers are vertical, so we create the ministry monster according to 5655, unites powers of policymaking, control administration, and they have the right to impose fines.
ДВІ, створюючи при цьому містобудівну палату на чолі
And they create city construction chamber. The minister is the head of which, and the minister on his or her own will make decision whether they impose fines on the architect or somebody else. So this is the third thing that is written in the draft law, and they included the principle, which is the biggest corruption risk, where in one ministry all the possible functions are included, and also the Ministry of Regional Development, they are owners of the unified digital system, and they are working with that in usual mode, and that is why creation of the corruption window. So people cannot get the truth from there. I am really sorry for the fact that we took more time than we thought we will take. I would like to thank all the participants. I would like to thank all the speakers. I would like to thank from my side, and then I will give the final word to Mr. Oleksandr Slobozhan. I would like to say also it's very important that in the center of each reform, of each marathon, of our meetings, there should be a person, a citizen, with a dignity, with a will, with the rights. And when architects are working, when we are creating some kind of reform, we have to keep our focus on our residents. Just like how we are working with this principle on city construction code, and today we will have one more meeting. And the last thing I would like to mention, we are really tired of the draft law 5655. We are tired of the fact that we have to react to this and make such things and such marathons. We would like to direct our efforts to other things. So using the opportunity, I would like to address the President of Ukraine and thank him that still he hasn't signed this draft law. And if you have the opportunity, please support creation of city construction code. We hope for your support, and we thank you very much for being with us. So, Oleksandr, the floor is yours. Dear colleagues, thank you very much to all of you, to all of those who want to participate in the work on development of city construction code. We have all the contacts on the websites. Thank you very much one more time to Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, everybody who joined us. We finalized the topic of the draft law 5655, and we are uniting our efforts in development and implementation of city construction code and the best international European standards. Thank you very much for your attention.